Welcome, geeks, to another exciting episode of Rockin the Code World with dotNetDave. I'm David McCarter. I'm glad you're back. We've had a couple weeks off, or a week off, I forget. It's been a couple crazy weeks, not only me personally, but in America, so I forget when our last show was. But I'm glad you're all back. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're having a great weekend, no matter where you are. Let me know what you're up to this weekend. I'm always interested to see what geeks are doing during the weekend that's not coding. Take a break, geeks. Anyway, I'm really excited because my guest today is Dr. Jodie Burchell. I met her at the Build Stuff conference last year in Lithuania. And I got to know her a little bit, and I was so impressed that I asked her to be on the show. And so she's here. So I'm super excited to catch up with Jodie and see what she's up to and learn more about what her job as a data scientist developer really does. And because I've never known one, to tell you the truth. And so I'm really interested about what she does at JetBrains and for other companies. And so I hope you are too. So with that, make sure you start posting your questions now. And so we can get those answered for you. We're going to be talking about large models, language models. And so if you have any questions around that, AI, all that kind of stuff, please start posting your questions. And so I can ask Jodie as soon as she's on. And before we continue, I just want to say real quick, I'm looking for a new position, either contracting or full-time right now. So if you know of anybody who wants a .NET expert, me, email me or have them email me at davidmccarter@live.com or dotnetdave@live.com, and we'll get it set up. In the meantime, let's get going because I want to make sure I have enough time for Jodie to talk. We've got so much to talk about. We're not going to have enough time, so we're probably going to have her back on the show. One thing, next month, next March 16th, I'm doing a panel show again. I do really like these panel shows. I wish I could do more of them, but it's tough to corral multiple people on the same day. And so, you know, last year I wrote this long article on CSharpCorner about the importance of attending in-person conferences. And so I kind of wanted to follow up, and I just released another article kind of on the same kind of thing this week on CSharpCorner. I hope you guys are reading. But I kind of wanted to get some experts who's, has not only been speaking for a long time, like I have been, but people from different parts of the world. And so I have my good longtime friends since the 90s, Carl Franklin, Christian Buckley, Rocky. I've known he's been on the show too for a long time. And then Simon Painter, who I met in Copenhagen and at the Build Stuff conference in Lithuania. So we're going to have like a roundtable discussion to talk about why in-person conferences are very important for your learning and your career. And I want to talk, and the main reason is not only to inspire those of you who have never been to an in-person conference, which seems to be a lot of you, but I also want to get companies to pay for it, because I think it's very, very important for companies to support this. And I see that kind of support, at least in the last 10 years, just going away sometimes to nothing. And I think that's a huge mistake. And so I have my opinions, but I wanted to get some other people to say their opinions. And so we're all going to talk about it on March 16th. So I hope you'll come back on March 16th for this special panel show. I'm really looking forward to it. It'll be an extended, a longer version show, because with 5 people, we just, an hour is not going to cut it. So also another panel show I want to do is about being an older software engineer. So if you know anybody who's been in this career for about 20 years or so and is about over 45 years old, please have them email me at dotNetDave@live.com, because I want to do a panel show about this too, because me being in this world for a long time, I'm unfortunately struggling with, finding new positions that I really like working at, and other things too. But I kind of want to talk about that, not only so us developers have been around for a while can learn, but also as a warning to younger developers that you need to start working on these things now. And I guess what I'm trying to say is I wish I knew some of these things when I was a beginner. And so I'm also doing the show for you too. So if you know anybody, 20 plus years of experience, please have them email me so we can get the show scheduled, because I really want to do this this year. All right. Also, my new coding standards book is out. I hope you picked up a copy. Here's my proof copy of the paperback version right here. And I'm waiting for the hard cover copy to come in, so I'm excited about that. I'm going to be giving away hard copies at the conferences I'm speaking at this year, as a commemorative kind of thing for you all. So I'm excited to see the hard copy version. I've never had a hard copy book, so I'm excited. Anyway, I hope you go pick it up. It's been around for almost 20 years now, I guess. And next year will be its 20th year, and it's full of, it's 560 pages of tips and tricks and standards and other things that will make not only you a better developer, but also make your applications better, of course, that is always the goal. So I hope you go pick up a copy. It's available on Amazon.com right now, wherever Amazon ships books. Okay? All right. So I want to bring on Jodie. Dr. Jodie Burchell is a data scientist, developer, advocate at JetBrains, and previously was lead data scientist at the Verve Group Europe. She completed a PhD in clinical psychology and a postdoctorate in biostatistics before leaving academia for a data science career. So that's really interesting. She has worked for 7 years as a data scientist, both in Australia and Germany. She's from Australia. She's living in Germany right now, developing a range of products, including recommendation systems, analysis platforms, search engine improvements, which we all need, and audience profiling. Welcome, Jodie.
Hi, I'm super happy to be on the show.
Yeah, I'm glad you're back, and I'm glad to catch up with you after Build Stuff.
Yeah, that was Speaking of the benefits of attending in-person conferences, that was an exceptional example. That was such a great conference. I learned a lot, met some great people. We met. So
yeah, we met, and I don't remember ever speaking at a conference where 3 months later I'm still getting messages on the chat groups and stuff like that, and people sharing things, speakers sharing things and things like that. It's at least for that aspect, I really liked it. And I did really like the conference too. And I met so many speakers there, which I'm inviting you and other ones on the show. And, we have Auntie on next time. And so I'm really excited
he was
about
telling
that.
me. He's so excited. Yeah.
And that was a really great conference. And besides the cold, I really liked it. Well,
here in winter.
I live in Southern California where it's nice all the time. So,
Well, this time of year, it's very nice weather in Australia, and I get to see all of my friends going to the beach when I look on social media. So
yeah. Because your summers and everything are opposite of ours, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Christmas is 40 degrees, 100 degrees, I think, for Fahrenheit users.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we were just talking, and the Build Stuff conference is really great. Those of you, I don't know if they're still doing the early bird discounts for this year, but you should go to Build Stuff right now. And if you want to go, which I totally recommend going if you live in that part of the world, you should sign up now to save some money. And I liked it. I liked everything about it. I think it was very well run. I thought it was, I liked the venue. I think that conference was the conference I went to the most sessions I can ever remember going to at a conference. Because usually I don't go to many sessions being a speaker, and that one I made it a point to go to. And I didn't go to, I think one Rachel was doing or somebody else. I really wanted to go to. I couldn't because I was doing my workshop, and so it was a great conference. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope you did too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I don't remember being more tired getting back from a conference though, because there was always something to do, and you wanted to be with people all the time. So yeah, it was incredible. Like, I hope I can go back this year.
Yeah, I was wearing my watch that tracks my steps, and I would look at it going, "Oh my God, I've never walked that many steps in a day."
I know.
Especially walking around the town itself, and all that, and that was fun. Yeah. Like I said, everybody who's watching live, those of you, please post your questions. If you don't have questions, I have a list of questions I can ask Jodie. But what do you want to talk about first, Jodie?
Yeah, so I think a big part of my career as a data scientist has been in natural language processing. So when I was first working in natural language processing, that was when I was doing a lot of the work on search improvements. And this was around the time of GPT-2. This is how long ago it was. And so it's been very interesting, given this background, watching the kind of developments and conversations around large language models. And what I've been kind of trying to do as part of my job, I work as a developer advocate, so I sort of work as a bit of a liaison between JetBrains and the community, is a bit of education about what large language models actually were designed to do, what they can do, and what they can't do. And I'm kind of trying to, I guess, through this, take a topic that I think has a lot of hype and confusion and misinformation and is quite intimidating to get into, and make it a bit more approachable for everyone, because everyone really now is affected by these models.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So what is so can you define a large language model first so everybody's on the same page?
Yeah, so essentially a large language model is a generalist algorithm. They're based on a type of neural net called a transformer. So they're just a type of machine learning model. And they basically are designed to do a range of what are called natural language tasks. So natural language tasks are really any kind of thing that you want to automate that has to do with natural languages, like English or Spanish or Mandarin. So this can obviously include things like translation. That's an obvious one that jumps to mind. And this was actually the first use case of, modern large language models. But it's all sorts of things. Like it could be you need to classify text into different topics. You need to detect whether, I don't know, a piece of text is spam or not. That classic kind of machine learning problem. You can do that with large language models. Or you can classify whether a piece of text might be clickbait or not. You can also do things like summarizing text. You can do things like writing code. We've seen that, obviously. And you can generate other text. So these models were not actually initially designed to generate text, although that's kind of become the most famous use case. They were more designed to try and create models that could work with the difficulties of language. Like language is very complicated because the meaning of word changes depending on the context. And these were not the first, but the first kind of scalable models that could actually deal with text in its context, kind of learn a lot of meaning about grammar and how language behaves, and therefore be able to be applied to this range of natural language tasks. So this is the first point I really want to get across. These are language models. They're models designed for tasks to do with language, and that was their purpose, and that's what they excel at.
Yeah, that sounds... And I know a lot of companies are already using things like this. I even... I know this isn't language, but I just saw something on the news just like an hour ago that OpenAI is now testing a new feature that will create videos.
Oh, yeah.
Right now you can only do images, right?
Yeah.
For basically only images. And I've kind of wanted videos for, making a trailer to a conference I'm speaking at or something like that. And it looks like they're getting close to that, and at least OpenAI is, and it's really interesting on all these things that are being used, and so the language models you were talking about. What kind of companies use a model like that?
So models that are consuming them, or models that are companies that are consuming them, or companies that are producing them. Yeah, so like a whole range of different companies are going to be consuming them. So I think you would have seen the plethora of apps that have come out that are based particularly on the OpenAI APIs. One of the reasons actually as well, and we can get into this a bit later, that the OpenAI ecosystem has become so popular is it's very, very complicated and expensive to run large language models in real time, which is usually the case that most people want because they want it as an interactive.
Right.
And OpenAI have not only worked out how to do this really efficiently and bundled it up in this very nice API, but they're also very competitive on the pricing because it's very expensive to run these models. We can talk about why a little bit later.
Yeah.
But basically, they've kind of priced themselves the most competitively, and they've also made it very convenient to use it for developers. So you've got this sort of uses. You've also got uses like customer service. And I don't know if you saw it, there was this amazing news article I think came out this morning. Air Canada actually got sued by a customer because they were using a large language model based customer service chatbot. And it made up a policy that didn't exist and assured this customer they'd be able to get a refund within 90 days if they purchased tickets. And in fact, this policy didn't exist. The person couldn't get a refund and they were really upset. And like, these tickets were expensive because it's Canada. I think it was like $1,600 or something.
Yeah.
So there's an inappropriate use, overestimating the model a little bit. But then it's also all sorts of tasks that you might need to do to work with language. So publishers, if they need to, say, generate test questions from a particular book, they can use large language models. They're being used in search engine improvement. And in fact, one of the first large language models, it's not a generative model, it's called BERT. This was actually used to do search engine improvements in Google like years ago. So there's really huge number of use cases, but you can say all these use cases are to do with language.
Yeah, your story reminds me of something that happened to me early this week, where last week I was getting these emails from this recruiter, and the recruiter didn't call me on the correct number. I told her to. And so I finally rearranged the phone interview for Monday. And so the recruiter calls me Monday. It wasn't a recruiter. It was
Oh,
an AI recruiter. And
what?
yes. And as soon as she said, "So tell me about yourself," I hung up because I'm going, "No, this is this is not okay. I'm sorry. You
No.
know, if you want me to tell you something about yourself, you have my resume. Why are you asking me?" Right?
Yeah.
But I could not. I mean, recruiting is hard. Is a struggle enough, right? Dealing with human recruiters, but this was just like I couldn't believe it. Yeah.
Wow. But how did you know?
Because I could tell by the voice when she
Oh,
actually
yeah, yeah,
called
yeah,
me,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I didn't
Yeah,
know.
but
I thought I was talking to a person. Her name was Jamie. She was conversing back and forth with me, kind of like a normal person, except she didn't call the right number. And but yeah, as soon as I heard her Jamie on the phone, I go, "Oh my God, I can't believe this is happening to me."
yeah, and this is actually a great case of overextending the model.
Yes,
So
yes.
apart from the fact that it's not really something that people want and are
It's
going to be open to,
humanizing, right? Yeah,
yeah, it's also, I would argue, extending the models past their natural capabilities.
yeah.
So, okay, you reply to this AI, it takes what you've said, it transcribes it, puts it in text. So that's not a large language model, but there are other generative AI models that can do that.
Sure.
And then, the large language model does a synthesis or something with it. But what if you try to push that model past the information that you have given it? Then it will start hallucinating. And
Yeah.
so that's a pretty delicate use case. You can't automate something like that. So depending on what they're trying to do behind the hood, like maybe it's going to tell them that, I don't know, you're the CEO of Google or something, which I don't know would be great for you, but
I know it's just I just couldn't believe it. I was and I kind of tweeted at the company who did this, going, "No, this is not okay."
no.
This is not what I expect when a recruiter has been emailing me, right? And yeah, I was. But next time maybe I'll just mess with Jamie and see what I can get her to do
Yeah, yeah.
next time. But yeah,
This is also like, so the talk I gave at Build Stuff, it's a talk that I've given at a number of conferences last year. And I'll be doing not a similar talk, but a talk kind of along these lines this year. So basically, the reason I was motivated to do these talks is when ChatGPT came out, which was late 2022, sure, there was a lot of hype about, are these intelligent?
Sure.
And they're not. We
Yeah.
can get into that.
Yeah.
Which does mean that people tend to overestimate them. But there was also a lot of, I think, very disrespectful discourse around, all of these low-skilled jobs are going to get automated. And sure, there are some jobs
Sure.
like, say, transcription, which could be largely, I wouldn't say automated, but they're going to be changed. You're not
Yeah.
going to be doing manual transcription with these models coming out.
Yeah.
But it's also like, for someone to think that recruitment is a low-skilled job
I know.
you see that people have just fallen into this trap, and they've
Yeah.
probably laid off a bunch of recruiters at that company.
Yeah.
I didn't like the tone of the discourse. It also leaked into development when Copilot came out, and a lot of developers were really afraid for their jobs.
Sure.
Spoiler alert, you do not need to be worried
No,
about your job.
no.
Your job is not to write code. Your job is to solve business problems.
Exactly. That's what I say all the
Yes.
time.
Yes, I've been saying this since Copilot came out. Copilot's a great tool. We've got our own AI assistant, great tool, but it's not going to completely automate a lot of things.
No.
It's just another tool, and it's a language tool. It's not designed to automate a human interaction. That's really a step too far.
Well, even when I'm submitting resumes, some of the sites now have a checkbox at the bottom of the page says you can opt out of having your resume looked at by AI, and I always do that. Right? I opt out of that, going, no, I want a human reading this, because the human's really going to understand more about me, as someone who's been around this world for a long time and my accomplishments than some freaking AI is, right? And so
it's also like the tone that a lot of what they call are assistant AIs. So things like ChatGPT, they're the ones that are specifically, it's a process called fine tuning, where the model is basically further trained on sort of question answer sets or like chat sort of pairs. Someone puts in a chat prompt and then there's the answer. The tone that a lot of them have, because I guess this is how the data sets were created, is I actually got ChatGPT to look me up on the internet and describe my biography. Just out of curiosity, I was just testing the sort of search capabilities that it has. And obviously it's easy for me to check, And it was so overblown. So the way it was accurate, but it was like, Dr. Burchell has had such an distinguished career. I'm like, it's really not that distinct. Like, it's just a normal career. I had some jobs, but I'm like, it made it kind of sound like I was, driving forward the field of data science. And I was like, I would not want an AI doing that as a summary of my CV because someone's going to look at that and be like, what the hell?
Right. Yeah. And that's, and you're right. I think in the case of this recruiting company, and I don't know how many others are you doing it, but you're right. This is not a proper use of AI, right? It's and they're probably paying a lot of money for this too, right?
Yes. Yeah. So maybe this is actually a good segue for me to talk about why the models are so expensive to run.
Yeah. Well, first, I was just curious, and I was even curious before the show is. So you're talking about these, at least for you deal with languages. And so how big are these data sets that are created to do this natural language processing?
Yeah, so there's a few different data sets that are used. Sort of the traditional data set is one called Common Crawl. And Common Crawl is like, you can probably get it from the name. It's a big crawling of the internet. And it is petabytes of text data. These are absolutely astounding data sets. Just also as an aside, there's a thing called, well, it's not a unique term to large language models, but scaling laws apply to large language models. So the bigger the data set that you feed into the model when you're training it, and also the sort of the bigger you make the model, this is measured in the size of the parameters, actually the better the performance or prediction of these models is. So it can generate more sophisticated text, it can encode more knowledge. And the reason for this, it's explained very well. There's this video by a very preeminent computer scientist called Andrej Karpathy. He put together this really nice video called, I think it's A Busy Person's Guide to LLMs. I can send you the link if you want to post it in the show notes. But basically, the way he describes it is so nice. He essentially says, it's almost like you take these petabytes of web data and you do a lossy compression. And so the bigger you make the model, obviously the less you need to compress. Therefore, the more accurate it's going to be. Is less information loss. But yeah, you're talking kind of petabytes of data. And then depending on how big you make your model, you can be talking about, say, like a 10 times compression of that. But that's still pretty big, right?
Still pretty big.
Yeah. So I think there was a model that I was looking at as an example of using it and getting it to do predictions. It's a process called inference. So this is a 20 billion parameter model.
Wow.
To put that in perspective, that's 20 times smaller than ChatGPT 3.5's model.
Wow.
Yeah. And the estimate is GPT-4 is 1 trillion parameters. So that's 3 times bigger than 3.5. Yeah, these are like enormous. Like they're not joking when they say large. Like these are large.
Yeah.
And so what you basically have when you're trying to run these models is you have 2 files. You have an instruction set, which is like 500 lines of C or whatever. Doesn't really matter, but C is obviously very efficient. And that's an instruction set of how to do the predictions. And then you have another file, which is what are called the weights. And the weights is kind of the relationships between different parts of the model and sort of instructions on how to process information as it comes in and how to, use the inputs to create the outputs. There's no kind of point to get too much into it. It's very technical, but you just have these two files. So obviously your instruction file, your C file is quite small, but the file containing all the weights, that's the big one. Yeah. And depending on the precision of the numbers, because they're all just numbers, they're just weights, like literal numbers that you will multiply. This can be, twice the size of the number of parameters. And so for this 20 billion parameter model, it's it's 40 gigabytes. And that's, and like the bad news is you can't get away with running these models on CPU machines. You need GPU machines. So you're looking just to load the model in to get enough machines together to basically have at least 40 gigs of GPU memory available. And then you need additional memory to do all the calculations to actually run that model and store the kind of interim objects and things like that. So yeah, for this kind of single model that I was talking about, you're kind of looking at needing 52 gigs of a GPU memory to run this thing in real time. And so just imagine how expensive this is. Like out of curiosity, I went looking for an AWS instance that would actually be big enough. I found one, cost $40 an hour to run. And it's only available in one zone. And of course, you can kind of partition this across different machines. There's also like a process called quantization, which allows you to reduce the precision of those numbers and make those files smaller. And this kind of gives you, some loss to the performance of the model, but still, it's a lot smaller. But even then, maybe it's 3 times smaller and you're still dealing with this enormous object that you need to process with GPU memory. So this is why it's so expensive. And this is sort of why also you need to think, do you need a large language model to solve a problem?
Right.
It's complicated, it's expensive. This is why LLM ops is becoming its own thing. It's very specialized skills to run this efficiently.
That's got it. So that's why ChatGPT is always behind, right? Because it does take so much sheer amount of time to get all that data in and then process it and then make it live, right?
Yeah, and it's even more complicated than that because essentially what's happening is, so you have your prompt, you feed that into the model, and what it does is literally one word at a time, next word prediction. So it'll take in your prompt, it'll predict the next word, it'll pass that word back to the end of the prompt, append it, pass it through again, and the whole thing just keeps going. And you see how wordy this model is, like it's just going, doing that. So it's a very like computationally intensive process, and it's frankly quite impressive they're doing this in real time.
Because I mean, I use ChatGPT a lot for editing, posts and things like that. And I have to say, it's not perfect, but it does generally a really good job and pretty dang quickly too. And you were talking about, a few minutes ago, you asked it about yourself. Well, I've, working on my books, it actually pulled in stuff I already written about the subject that I wrote and put it into. And I was going, okay, I'm not sure where they got that, but that's interesting. That
you're like, I wrote that 15 years ago. I forgot about that.
Because I have so many posts on my blog now, I can't remember them all anymore, and somehow it knew some stuff I've written, and so. And me personally, I'm not worried about somebody at ChatGPT stealing my work or anything because no one pays for it anyway. But yeah, I think that's cool. I know ChatGPT is a little behind. I know Bard is more real time, and like when I need to ask some more recent .NET questions, I have to ask Bard and not ChatGPT because ChatGPT is behind.
Interestingly, actually, and maybe I can do a little demo here because I prepared something with ChatGPT Pro. If you wouldn't mind just switching over to my screen. Yep. So I won't do it in real time unless you sort of have the patience to sit through it, generating the whole thing. It takes a while. But you can see here that basically I have the GPT-4 model enabled. You can see here that it's telling us here that we have DALL-E, browsing, and analysis. So this is actually part of the modern use of large language models. So I'm going to kind of talk through what it's doing, and then I'm going to talk about why this is so important. So I really love, since I moved to Germany, I really fell in love with football, soccer, as we would call it in Australia and America.
Sure.
And in particular, I really love the Women's World Cup. And as Americans, you can be really proud of how you went in the one before the last one you dominated. So basically, I haven't had time to cross-check this information. So just a caveat, this could be a hallucination. But basically, what I did was I said, please look up for me the results of the FIFA Women's World Cup and find how many times each national team has made it to round of 16 since 1991 when it started, 2013, and display these results in a table. So what it's done is it's gone away, and you can, when I started this search, it said basically calling Bing, because based on please look up, it understood that it needed to go away and find explicit, more recent information.
Oh, please look up. Yeah.
Exactly. And I explicitly told it, please find me results until 2023, because the training period of this model ended, like the data that it had available was until sometime in 2022. I think it might be January 2022. So it wouldn't know about the 2023 World Cup unless it goes and searches for it and explicitly brings more information in. So what it's done is it's done a web search, it's found a bunch of information, and it's done text summarization, one of the things the models is really good at. And then it also understands the concept of creating a table. So in Markdown, what it's done is it's created a nice table for me. But the thing is, and then it gives me a whole bunch of blah, blah, blah. It actually tells me the sources, which is a lot better than using large language models out of the box without this.
Sure.
And then I'm like, you didn't give me quite what I wanted. I actually wanted the exact numbers. So it's gone back, done another search, and found the numbers. Again, I am sorry if these are not correct. I did not have, I thought of this idea just before I came on the show, so I didn't have time to cross-reference it. And then essentially, again, it tells us our sources, so we can go and check that. And then this is super cool. This is the analysis section.
Oh, it did a graph. Wow.
And let me show you how it does it. It's wild. Basically, it's running Python code under the hood. So this is a Python library for plotting. It's one of the most famous ones. You can see it's prepared a list for us here, another list for us here. So basically, it's pulled the two columns, passed them to lists. And then it's not the nicest syntax for matplotlib, but essentially it's passing in both of those variables as like fields. And it's even come up with nice labels for us. And then basically show it.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So what's going on here, and the reason why this is important is we know that one of the problems with large language models that we already talked about is that the data is out of date. You know, basically it doesn't have data past the time. Yeah, exactly. But the other problem is when it doesn't know things, it tends to make it up. And sorry, I'm anthropomorphizing it a bit here. When the model has not encoded information about a topic, it will just synthesize it. And there's no way to tell unless you cross-reference it. So modern uses of these models have started incorporating a few different things. One of them is called retrieval augmented generation, which is the idea that you have some sort of data source and you pass in a query, you basically find the most similar information in your source to your query, and then you pass it over to the large language model and get it to do exactly what it just did here, basically synthesize it and summarize it.
Sure.
And the other is what's essentially kind of tool use. ChatGPT calls them plugins. It's the idea that you let them access external APIs or access limited computing environments like here, where it can access this very limited Python interpreter environment.
Sure.
And these really overcome a lot of limitations with this model because it helps update the knowledge. This sort of use of external data sources has been shown to drastically reduce hallucination rates. But also what's really interesting is like these models are really bad at certain things. Like they're really bad at math.
Oh,
So-
yes. Tell me about it.
yeah.
ChatGPT cannot count. I'm sorry.
Yes. So if I were to type in, say, I don't know, give me the square root of, I don't know, some huge number, it's probably not going to have that in its knowledge base. So it's not going to be able to just spit that out. What it's going to do is it's going to call a little Python interpreter and it's going to use a little calculator under the hood. And what's really good at doing math? Programming languages. Although let's not get into JavaScript and the whole confusion around math in JavaScript.
Yeah.
That was something I learned about a couple of years ago and I was like, what the? Horrified. So yeah, another really simple example I got here.
Going back to the FIFA.
That
That first response that you got from ChatGPT, how long did it take it to do that?
It took a little bit of time. I can actually, let's start a new chat and I'll show you.
Okay.
So let's say, please look up, what do you want me to look up? Like something that happened in the last year, or could be something about the current election or...
Well, I don't want to talk about the politics on the show, but I don't know. Ask it how many severe... Well, no, it probably...
Maybe the Super Bowl. You just had the Super Bowl.
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
Who won... Please look up who won the 2004 Super Bowl.
Super Bowl, yeah. It's probably not going to know, right?
It should. There we go. So doing research with Bing.
Oh, it's looking at Bing. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So that's exactly what it's doing. Under the hood, it's just gone and done a Bing search. And there you go. You can see the article that it's extracted that information from.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's really cool, right? So
and even prompts, or even maybe a little more complicated prompts, it still, to me, is pretty dang fast. Compared to what it's doing in the background, right?
It's amazing. It's incredible. This is why I also wanted to show this particular example, because this is quite a complicated thing you're asking it to do. I stole this example again from Andre Karpathy from that video that I talked about. He gives one where he was basically presenting to like a company, and he was kind of doing a like multi-step example where he was showing, how much did they receive in each seeding round? And then there was missing information. So he's like, infer based on the information you do know how much they likely received in these seeding rounds. So kind of showing that really like complicated multi-step tool use that it's doing under the hood, but presenting it in this nice, friendly chat format.
Yeah, I might, because I'm always frustrated like making graphs and or charts in Excel. Maybe I'll try ChatGPT next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know it could do charts yet, but yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it absolutely can. It's super cool. So you do need to, just as a kind of FYI for the listeners and also for you, you do need to upgrade to ChatGPT Pro. Yeah. And I think there's still a waiting list for it, but it didn't take long for me to get off that waiting list. Oh, I got an error. There you go.
Yeah, Simon and I both know it doesn't write that great of code if you ask it to, and I've been working on my books, and I couldn't come up with like a pseudo example, and so I asked ChatGPT to do it, and I asked it again and again, and I asked it like 3 times, and all 3 times it wasn't what I was looking for, and I had to write it myself, which is fine, but I was just trying to save a little time, but I like how ChatGPT calls methods that don't exist in .NET, right? It's
My God. Yes. Yeah. Because again, it's probably relying on outdated information. Yeah. This is also a super interesting thing. So JetBrains, we released our own AI assistant late last year. And so I've done quite a lot of media appearances and other things about it. And like I've already said, the thing that I'm always saying is if you think your job is to write code, you haven't understood your job.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But it's why we called it AI assistant. It's why Microsoft called it Copilot. Like explicitly, this should just be another tool that's helping you maybe template things quickly or come up with, I don't know, a refactoring you may not have thought of,
Sure.
or
Right. Or
help
unit
you
tests. They can write unit tests, right, and things like that. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But you need to check your code. And I saw
Yes.
this.
Always.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw it, but there was this incredible survey. I think it was Source Labs did it late last year. And basically, they were surveying people about their use of ChatGPT or Copilot. I can't remember which one. But they essentially found that something like 61% of developers admitted that at least once they'd committed code without checking it that they'd gotten from ChatGPT, and 25% admitted that they did it regularly. And I'm like,
Whoa.
I would love to say you wouldn't do that with Stack Overflow results, but I know that the Venn
sure some
diagram of
people
people
do.
who are doing
Right.
this
Yeah,
with
yeah,
ChatGPT
yeah.
and Stack
They're probably the
Overflow
same
is probably
people,
a
right?
circle. Exactly. So please don't be those developers.
Yeah. Well,
it's-
I was working on, I'm trying to get the .NET 8 version of my open source projects out. And, I've been a little bit slow because I've been writing and working on other things. But, I was recoding some things and ChatGPT came up and started writing it for me, which is cool. But it was calling methods in my own library that don't exist, right?
Oh my
and
God,
I was
yeah,
going,
yeah.
really? Come on. You couldn't look at my own class file and see what methods actually exist before you give me something that doesn't exist? Come on.
Yeah,
You know?
this is part of the challenge as well
Yeah,
with using
yeah.
large language models. Part of the problem is, like, have you ever heard of something called the context window?
No.
No. So basically, remember how I was talking about you have to pass in prompts and it will start completing like word by word. There's actually only a limited number of words, which are called tokens in this context, because it also includes things like punctuation, that you can actually fit in. And so when it comes to doing really complex tasks over, say, entire code bases, you got to pick very judiciously what you actually pass in, because not everything's going to fit. And it's also really expensive.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
if you want to go passing in a whole bunch, like, you need to process all that. If you're using OpenAI, you have to pay per token. And so, yeah, it's quite challenging. So, like, my team at work is doing something quite cool where they're actually using embedded, simpler machine learning models to try and predict what should go into that context. But if you've got a really big project,
Yeah. It's
you
hard.
might miss some things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe the LLM doesn't kind of understand, like, I should
Yeah.
prioritize this over this. So we're dealing with, I think, systems that are very different from things that developers are used to. I would like to say, as a data scientist, I'm slightly more used to it, but what bothers me about them is they're true black box models. And there's not that many of them that exist in machine learning anymore. Like, there's usually a way to explain in some way how the model is doing what it's doing. But these models are so big, we don't really have an efficient way of doing that yet. So the results are often sometimes confusing and you don't know why. And it does bother me a bit. But yeah.
Well, that's, ever since, ChatGPT came out and, people started worrying for their jobs, I was going, we're in the infancy stage of this, right? This is not even really started. And we have a really long way to go before this is really, really useful, right? And so speaking of that, I don't want to go too far out in the future, but what do you think, for example, the ChatGPT or something like that will look like in 2 years? As a data scientist, you probably know more about this than we do, right?
Yeah. So, look, let me kind of maybe address the elephant in the room. I don't believe that large language models are a path to what's called artificial general intelligence. So I think in and of themselves, language models don't really have the capability to evolve these sort of capabilities. I have a couple of talks about this. One's called the IQ of AI. If you're interested in looking that up, again, I can send Dave that link and you can put it in the show notes. So that's probably just something I want to get out of the way. But again, going off the direction that things have been going, the way that we're kind of seeing large language models being used right now is what's called as reasoning engines. So they do have the capacity to do simple reasoning. We saw this with, it understood please look up means please do a Bing search. It's not, that's not an explicitly programmed thing. It can infer that. These reasoning capabilities are not, I would say, super sophisticated, but if you build them into systems that have access to a variety of tools, they can do a lot more with them acting as this sort of agent that coordinates things. And we also know, as I talked about with these scaling laws, that the bigger you make these models, the more sophisticated they can get. And then we've got these attempts to sort of quantize them and make them smaller. So we get powerful models with less compute. Yeah. So with all that said, again, I'm going to steal a bit from Andrej Karpathy from that video that I mentioned. His kind of vision for this, and I think it's really interesting, is the idea of almost an LLM OS, where you have basically the LLM acting like, the operating system that coordinates between a whole bunch of different functions. You have your memory is essentially the context window, what you can fit in. And you have sort of systems set up to make decisions about what should and should not be done with the inputs and outputs to the system in order to do more and more complicated tasks. So as I think we work with these models, they're going to become embedded as the center of a system that works with a variety of not just other models, but other sort of tools, other APIs. And really, they're going to become much more multi-component systems. Now, whether this is a path to AGI, I do not feel at all qualified to comment on. Definitely, I would say from what I've read about AGI, it's going to be a multi-part system. It's not just going to be one model, it's going to be multiple models.
Sure.
But yeah, I think in order for these to be useful, in order to overcome these problems with hallucinations and aging knowledge bases and the things that it can't do, like math and logic.
Can't even do math. Come on.
It can't do math because it's not a language task. It's a symbolic task.
Yeah.
So that's sort of, I think, like I agree with Andrej that that's probably the direction we're going in. And this integration with tools will just get more and more integral.
Yeah, I never thought about it being part of the OS itself, but that brings up a whole world of ideas and questions. I would say that so I guess our OSs are going to radically change in the near future, and so as long as they fix the search in Windows, I'm good with that.
Well, large language
especially if
models.
you're using OneDrive, it sucks.
Yes.
Yeah, so some things I'm looking forward to it, and going back to a little bit because I don't want to harp on this too much because we're out of time. But going back to the AI is not going to replace us, and you and I kind of see eye to eye on this. Where I've been saying for a long time, even before AI, that if you're coding most of the day, you're doing your job wrong, right?
Yeah.
Coding is just a tool. It's not really our job, right? To me.
No.
A lot of you software developers might say, you're full of, what, Dave? But no, it's true. I mean, we're problem solvers. That's
Absolutely.
what we do, right? And code is just a tool for us to tell a computer to solve a problem quicker than we could do it ourselves, right? And that's what we are. We're not, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's lots of us are interested in solving code problems and getting things to connect to each other. But, quite frankly, I want to write less code and I want to focus more on the customers and things like that to deliver great quality apps that people love and worry less about the code. And so I'm looking forward to AI. I almost said replace, but help us, in doing these things for the customers, right?
Yeah, and again, like when I've been talking about AI assistant, the way I talk about it is like JetBrains writes tools, right, that make it easier and faster to code than say with Notepad++.
Sure.
An LLM is just another one of those tools. Maybe
Right,
it's
right.
a bit of a step change compared to more incremental things, but you are faster with an IDE than without an IDE.
Sure, sure.
You can be faster, and I don't want to say you always would be, using AI to help you with your code or other parts of your development workflow than you are without it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that's where it's really going to, like JetBrains and other companies, Microsoft is really going to help us, in accomplishing those goals. But yeah, like I said, everybody, if you're coding 8 hours a day, you're not doing your job correctly. So
Go talk to your stakeholders.
yeah, talk to your stakeholders, because all they want to see you is typing on a keyboard, right? And if they think you're not typing, then you're goofing off, and that's not that's well, some people are, but most of us aren't goofing off, right? And
No.
but we're way over time already, but and I didn't get to one of the questions I had ChatGPT generate for you. That's so Simon, my producer, mentioned to me a while ago that I should have questions prepared, and I'm always really bad, especially at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, coming up with questions. And so I've been using ChatGPT, and I have to say, the list of questions that comes if I just feed it your bio is pretty interesting. And but I didn't get to one of them. So the question I ask all of my first-time guests is, what do you do for fun besides working on AI?
Yeah. So I love to bake. This is kind of my big thing. I also have been on and off trying to do ceramics for a while.
I love ceramics too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really bad because I'm never dedicating the time to it. And then you wouldn't say I'm doing it for fun, but I'm still trying to learn German. After 6 years of living in Berlin, I became one of those immigrants who never properly learned German, but I know enough to get by on the phone if I need to call for an appointment. So that's a milestone.
That's cool. I know, sorry, Simon, but I'm going to take another minute. But, I was watching, I don't know if it was Star Trek or something like that. And this is what I want AI to do. I want a little thing on my collar I can push. And no matter who I'm talking to, I hear English and they hear whatever they're supposed to hear. And I want that so bad when I go to countries like Lithuania and places like that to, help me, because I'm really bad at, like I said, I'm bad at English, so other languages are just not for me. So that's one of the reasons I couldn't move to Germany, is because there's no way I'm learning German. I mean, but if I had one of those things on my collar, right, that would be awesome. Yeah.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for being on the show. I definitely, we barely talked about, we talked a lot, but we only got a little bit in your list. And so I definitely want to have you back on. So
sure.
Next time you want to talk, or I'll hit you up. I definitely want to have you back on the show, because I've never had a doctor on the show, I don't think. So now we're official. We have a doctor on the show. Right?
Oh, no.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you so much for taking some time out of your evening in Germany there, and spending some time with us. And I don't know about everybody else, but I learned a lot, and I can't wait to have somebody like you on the show to learn more about this subject, because we're going to need to be talking more about this more and more, right? Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much. I had a blast, and enjoy your day in sunny California.
Thank you. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much.
All right. Ciao.
Yeah, that was a great episode. I don't know about you all, but I learned a lot, and I had all these questions rolling around in my head I didn't get to ask Jodie, and so I definitely want to have her back on and talk about it in the future. But we're almost out of time, so I want to try to finish up almost on time, and that is, so one of the things I've been doing since I've been looking for a job is I've been writing a lot on my website about performance And I think I have 32 articles ready to be released, and they'll be coming out in the next couple months. And so I hope you will go to this URL there and check out all my articles. It's a longer list every time you're going to visit. So I hope you check back often. And because, we were talking about AI, but, the cloud, performance is super important for the cloud, because that's, the longer your code executes, the more you're going to be charged for the same thing. And so performance is super important these days, and not only for the users, but for cost too. And so I hope you will do that. Go to that URL and check out some of my articles. All right, I found this today, this week. I thought it was really good. You code, you're done, and then, now I have to write the unit tests and documentation and code review. And now all those things are important, but yeah, the coding is not just all your job, right? There's many other things that's important that we have to work on, and all those things are important. So don't get discouraged. That's one of the reasons when I'm writing code, I'm always working on the documentation and things like that at the same time, so I don't have this big backlog towards the end of a release. And so I thought that was funny. I don't know about you all. I hope you all will help me help the kids from slums in Delhi, India. You all know this is a very special project to me. There's a picture of the last time I visited the Voice of Slum. There's somebody either singing to me or saying a poem or something like that. And Dave and Chandy are two people that really inspire me in this world. And so I hope you take a couple minutes out of your time today and go to thevoiceofslum.org and donate whatever you can. I know some people might not be able to donate, but believe me, the kids will enjoy anything you can send them, because they really need the support to help lift them out of the slums and get them training, get them fed, get them clothing, so they can be great adults in the future. So please do that. I really will appreciate it. All right. Speaking of the next episode, Antti, who I met in Copenhagen and Lithuania, is going to be on. I've hung around with him and really got to know him. He's a fun guy, and I can't wait to catch up with him, because I haven't seen him since Lithuania. So March 2nd, that'll be the next show. I hope you come back for that. Also, please help your fellow humans. The American blood banks are in a shortage right now. So please go donate blood. I talked to one of my friends last week, and he told me he donated a double red cell, and so that's great. You have to be hooked up to a machine for that, but just donating normal blood just takes like 30 minutes out of your time. Doesn't really hurt that much, and you're going to be banking some karma for when you need blood. And I recently received this email from the San Diego Blood Bank, who I donate to, and it says I have saved up to 258 lives with my donations, which is over 18 gallons now. I don't know what that is in other parts of the world, but 18 gallons of blood is a lot of blood. And so I've been able to save that many people. When I got that email, it made me feel so good that, this is proof that, all the work I do to make sure I do, donate every 4 weeks is really paying off and really helping humans. And you all know I love helping people. And so this is part of that. So, all right. With that, please email your suggestions, including who you want me to be on, to come on the show, or what topics you want me to do on the show, or whatever else. I don't get enough email from you all. So please send me an email and let me know how do you like the show and how I can, make it better for you. So with that, I'll see you on March 2nd.